All right. Welcome back to We Die Like Men. I'm Mike. Today's video, well, second video I'm shooting today. For those of you who wonder, I try to shoot a couple, two in a day, and then get them edited and ready. And a few days later, it's kind of like when the mood or something hits me, a topic will come into my mind. Stuff like that. So that's why I'm dressed the same sometimes in certain ones. Um, Sometimes I'll get up and change my shirt or whatever if I really want to spread it out more. But anyways, I kind of wanted to go over a topic today that I think a lot of us guys can relate with, and that's the relationship with our own dads. Being a father, obviously I had a father. He has passed away. October of 2023, Dad passed. A little over a month before his 79th birthday. Uh, he had some health issues. He decided on the second round of prostate cancer that he just wasn't going to deal with it. And it became more aggressive, quicker, and eventually he passed from it. After a long struggle at home on hospice, he passed. I loved my father. In some ways, we're very similar. In some ways, we're very, very different. Some of that just because, I'm half him and half my mother. And my experiences are different. Some of that is by design by me. Um, I'll, I'll dive into that. And I think it's okay to not want to be. Hold on. Yeah. That's a door that goes out onto my deck. I had a curtain open, but people are heading out on the deck. I feel weird sitting there, people watching me film a video. I don't know why. I mean, I'm weird anyways, so what difference does it make? Um, but I think it's okay to not want to be exactly like your father. Does that mean they were a bad person? Not necessarily. I think when we're young, um, we want to find our own way, make our own mark, and be our own self. I think there's times, especially when we're young, where there's some resentment. Well, dad never let me do this, or dad always made me do that, or whatever. Now I'm going to go do whatever I want. And as we get older, I think there's times where we start kind of going back and realizing, well, you know what, the old man was right, or at least partially right on some things. Um, Getting on to 50 years old now, I think for me, there's those times it's like, well, I know he was hard on me about certain things, but I understand why now. I have a 19-year-old son. I I'm hard on him on some things because I want him to do better than me. His potential is sky high. He's smart. He's articulate when he wants to be. He's got a good memory for things that interest him. He's got talents. He can go on and do way better than I ever did, and that's what I want for him. I want him to, when he's my age and he's looking back, not have as much regret, be able to look back on his life and smile and be like, hey, you know what, man, I did pretty damn good. Whether he credits me with any of that or not, I don't care as much. It's more, I want him to live the life that I know he can and be successful. I want it for my daughter too, but she's 16. There's still, a ways, few years anyways, before she's out on her own like that. Still teaching her that stuff, but with him, it's like now it's time to, the rubber meets the road. Hopefully, I taught you well, and I still offer him advice. I'm sure there's times when he'd rather not have it. I know there's times he'd rather not have it, but with my dad, so I was born in 1976. My father was born in 1944. I'm the youngest of four. There's 10 years between the oldest and youngest. So, dad growing up in the 40s and 50s and graduating high school in the very early 60s, times were different. Life was different. His father was born in 1918. My grandfather was a wonderful man. Loved him dearly. Um, Dad grew up, for those of you who are old enough to get the reference, the Father Knows Best era. That was a TV show, 1950s, I'm guessing, is when that started airing. I don't remember. Leave It to Beaver, those kind of shows. According to my mother, that was kind of the household he grew up in. It was like this idyllic. They were not wealthy people. They were solidly middle class family. Um, Grandfather worked. Grandmother stayed home while the kids were in school and growing up. Once they were gone, she went back to work. I say gone once they were, I don't know, probably high school. He has an older sister. My dad's 3 years older than him. So once they were probably old enough, that's probably when she went back to work. Uh, they, it was just, you didn't question certain things. If my grandfather said, well, this is what we're going to do, as a kid, that's what you did. My grandmother might question him, but the kids didn't. And Dad kind of always thought that that was just the way it should be. And while I agree to a point, there's times when the adults say, this has to be done right now, now's not the time to question that. It's time to do it and question later. Even questioning later with him sometimes was not received well. To me, that kind of was difficult because I'm inquisitive and I want to know why. And I think letting kids know why is a good way for them to learn why and look at it and go, oh, I didn't think of that. Well, those are things you need to think about, and that's why. At the right age, the right time, for things. Um, Dad and I shared a lot of interests. You'll see me wearing a Red Sox shirt. I'm not a big baseball fan. I was. This shirt is way too small for me now. It makes me look even fatter than I am. Um, but I threw it on for a couple of reasons. One was this video. My father loved baseball. It was his whole world outside of, it was his escape, a lot of it. He loved to hunt, he loved to fish, but baseball was his thing. He had been a big time pitcher all through high school. Matter of fact, he started playing high school varsity while he was still in middle school. He was that good. Um, it was kind of everything. He was kind of the definition of the guy that peaked in high school. He ended up breaking his shoulder, his collarbone on his pitching arm after baseball season. That following year after he graduated, playing ice hockey. Got shoulder checked, slid into the bench. They used to put the bench in and then let the pond freeze. So the bench didn't move. It never healed right. He never could throw properly again. And even when he could, 8 or 10 pitches and it hurt. Even in his 40s, it just hurt too much. He never could do it. It's a guy that could have possibly had a chance at the minor leagues, maybe even major leagues. He was that good. We'll never know. And I think that bothered him a lot. I played Little League age, but I played Farm League. I was never quite good enough to make the actual Little League team. That was the kids that were a step above me. I was okay. Right field, first base. That's what I played the most. I played some center field. I think I played third base twice, second base once, and shortstop a few times. Uh, Pitching and catching, no. I did some catching at practice, and I didn't care for it, but whatever. But with Dad, it was I'd go to practice all day, or all, evening, afternoon, get home, and he'd want to practice for another couple hours in the yard. Well, you got to work on this. I was 9 years old, 10 years old. It's like I went and I played and I had fun with my friends and I enjoyed practice and I enjoyed the games, but when I got home, I wanted to do other stuff. I didn't want to be out there. And I think I resented it to the point that when I got into high school, I didn't play baseball. Even though I got asked a lot to play, because I was good enough to have made varsity by that time. I had a good arm. I could throw Not like a good pitcher's arm, but I could throw from outfield, you know, depending how far out I was, I could make home plate. I had a good arm. Over the years of injuring it, doing stupid stuff, well, now I couldn't. But then I could. I was fast. I was a sprinter. Um, so stealing bases was fairly easy for me because it's a short distance. And I could hit consistently. I was not a power hitter. All the years I played and everything I did, I might have hit 3 or 4 home runs in my whole career. But I got on base a lot. I was a good, consistent base hitter. I could, you know, I could play well, I guess is the way to put it. But I didn't want to. Some of that was him. Some of that was a dear, dear friend of mine that I made playing baseball. Him and his brother. But one of them, we hit it off well. Um, and baseball was our thing. He passed away when we were in high school. I had moved away from there, but playing didn't seem right after that. It didn't feel right because I knew he wasn't there. I knew he wasn't out doing the same thing that I was. He was a power hitter. That kid hit more home runs in a game than I hit in my whole career. Tall, thin, lanky kid, the most unorthodox swing you ever saw, but wow, could he hit a baseball. Anyways, so I played soccer, and I know that probably bothered my dad some that I didn't play baseball. Um, but there was some of that rebellious side to it. We disagreed on lots of different things. Politically, we were pretty close to the same. Um, and that wasn't because, well, he believes it, so I will. It was because I did my own deep dives and research and went, yeah, I have to agree with this. We both loved history. We both loved military history as well as just general history. Um, my father was a quite intelligent man, but he could be very stubborn. He could be very narrow minded on certain things. Not everything, but very narrow minded on some things. Some would say maybe I am too, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't view myself as super narrow minded, but whatever. Um, I think he wanted me to be exactly him, live vicariously through me. Something I have really tried not to do with my son. It may seem it to him sometimes that I am, but I know certain pitfalls. I know what can screw up, and I'm hoping he doesn't fall into those. We all do at some point. Um, my dad was a firefighter. He retired as a lieutenant with the Portland, Maine Fire Department. He ended up head of fire prevention and code enforcement office. He was basically a fire marshal for the city of Portland. Had a chance to be the fire marshal for the state of Maine. The position was offered to him. He did not want it. He said the politics were bad enough in the city. I don't want to deal with them in the capital. And he just had enough. He had other things he wanted to do, other things he wanted to pursue. That's when we moved full time up to, up into the mountains of Maine. We always had a place up there. He retired at like 45 years old because he had 25 years or 20 years at the time. So he was happy to retire then. He regretted it later on that he should have stayed longer, but neither here nor there. He would get rather upset because I didn't agree with and do everything the way he did. And sometimes I'd egg that on a little bit because it was like, screw you, you know. But now that he's gone, there's a lot of that regret on my end of not spending more time just, I think, celebrating our similarities or enjoying our similarities more and maybe discussing our differences differently if we had. I know that he was proud of me in some ways. I think he was disappointed in me in others. Could be wrong. I never really wanted to ask because part of me didn't want to know that I had let him down, and other parts of me didn't give a shit. And that's fine to not really be like, hey, you know what? I know what I'm doing in my heart is right. I know it's right for me, and it's the path I'm going to take. And if others have an issue with that, well, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not hurting myself. Let me live my life. That's where he had an issue with it. Was, I was supposed to go to him and take his advice word for word and just move on with that. And I don't. I wasn't going to do that. I don't want my son to do that. I want him to heed my advice and be like, all right, how am I going to make that fit me? And that's what I want. And that's what I think should have. Fathers are, as a dad, I can tell you, if you aren't one, you won't understand this probably. If you are one, I think you will. It's a job where it's a fine line between protecting and ensuring that they have what they need, protecting and providing, and giving them enough free reign that they can screw up but learn from it and not get hurt, not too badly anyways, not screw themselves forever. It's that I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to all this, but I'm going to give you the freedom to fuck it up, for lack of a better term, while you're young enough that I can fix it for you. Some dads just jump right in and do it all. Some moms do that. I don't think that's the right way to do it either. We got to give them that reign, but it's a fine line between, damn it, you're going to do it my way, and I've got to let them figure out their way to do it. Sometimes us dads seem pissed off a lot, and we're frustrated, we're scared, we're angry with the world because we're watching itself destroy itself sometimes. I don't mean that the way some people may always take that, but, and we want better for our kids, and we're just tired, and we're watching everything we've been trying and trying and trying to dig for, be wrong, or go away. It's just, we're trying to save for the future. We're trying to make life better, and the deeper we dig, the farther behind we get, I guess is the way to put that. It's okay to look back at your dad, whether they're alive or not, and be like, confused, I think, as to how you really feel about certain things. I look back on him and I'm like, there's times that guy was a complete asshole. He was a son of a bitch. But also some of my greatest memories are with him and because of him. I think of the times we joked and laughed and we got along great. I think of the times when we didn't. I think of times when we went a month or two and I wouldn't even speak to him. I'm sure that really hurt his feelings, and I would be devastated if my son did that to me. So that's kind of like, geez, I'm sorry, Dad. Like I said, that's one reason once in a while, even though the shirt's too small for me, I throw on my Boston Red Sox shirt. He was a diehard Red Sox fan. That was his team. His dad was at that time, Boston Braves fan before they moved to, Atlanta. That's how old they are. My grandfather and dad were. Dad didn't do well with like times changing, and I don't mean like, oh, it's daylight savings time or whatever. I mean like when my wife and I bought our first house, we paid like $135,000 for a 2-bedroom condo. 2007. February. I think we bought it in February. End of January, beginning of February. I forget the exact date. And he's like, holy crap. He said, I bought a 3-bedroom house on acre and a half of land for $13,000. Yeah, Dad, 1968, from your parents. Big difference. Um, he's like, well, why don't you move? If you move another 20 miles away, you'd get a place so much cheaper, and taxes are cheaper, and everything like that. And I'm like, it isn't anymore, though. He couldn't wrap his head around that things had changed so rapidly and so drastically. He never could. And it's like, what do you mean that costs, $400? Those used to be $60. Yeah, 35, 40 years ago they were. They're not now. What do you want me to do about it? Not buy things that I need? Um, you know, and that was always tough to deal with. I get where he was coming from, and I understand that it's hard sometimes to look back. I now look back at, I go to buy something, I'm like, holy crap, I remember when those were less than half that price, and it wasn't that many years ago. But I don't get mad at my son when he's going to go buy, you know, a new pair of work boots, and they're $140. Like, geez, I used to get them for $60. Well, yeah, 20 years ago I got them for $60. I have to remember that too. Um, so it's always that you're always going to be a little bit your dad and a little bit not. To what percentage you are and what percentage you aren't, is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Is it 90-10? One way or the other. Well, it's going to vary from everybody else. I'm told I look a lot like him. Um, I'm looking in the monitor, and yeah, some of my facial expressions are him. Uh, there's certain things that definitely are. I feel bad for my son because when you look at a picture of him at his age and me at those ages, all the way back to, you can't tell the difference as to who's who. Other than when you look at the picture, you go, well, the clothing's definitely older in this, and the picture quality is definitely older. Well, that's Mike. This one's James. Other than that, I mean, it's scary. So that means eventually he'll grow up looking like this, which hopefully he doesn't get fat. Um, you know, but then this is my own fault. But my father was heavy too, and that was his fault. Um, we the last 2 years of his life. I mean, we all knew for like 5 or 6 years that we didn't have a lot longer with him. He was having a lot of issues. Um, but the last 2 years of it, there were some differences. He kind of come around some to certain things, and I come around to some certain things, and I kind of dropped some of the pettiness. He was really struggling to kind of with like, I don't know the word. We think he had early onset Alzheimer's or dementia. His doctor's like, without the proper tests, I can't tell you. And Dad was like, I'm not doing them. What's the point? I think he just didn't want to know. Um, but he would just, in his mind, it was, 40 years ago in that sense. Not so much like that certain people were still around, but that just the time error. And it was sad to see that, but I just learned to not argue with him about it. And, he'd be like, oh, he'd hear that I went and bought something, and, well, how much was that? Oh, geez, I don't remember, Dad. It wasn't that much. It was, I don't know, $100 or whatever. Well, that's not too bad, I guess. Well, in reality, it was $700, but he's thinking back when it was 80. I guess 100 isn't too bad these days. It was just easier. In our relationships with our fathers is probably one of, if not the most difficult, complex, and confusing relationships we'll ever have. From a guy to his dad, there comes that point in time where you go from being the son who has to be taken care of to being taught, to kind of looking up to your dad. Not everybody has a dad in their life. I get that. Building up through, and then all of a sudden there's that point where you're kind of equals. There's things he can do. that you can't. There's things you can do that he can't. Um, and then over time, it shifts the other way to where there's things that you can do that you're doing more than what he can do. You kind of have to be there to look after him. He's instead of you calling him and saying, "Hey, I don't know how to do this. Can you come show me?" and him teaching you how to wire in a new light, or, I got a noise in my car. I don't know what it is. What do you think it could be? Something like that. To now, him being like, rather it's, I've screwed my computer up. Can you come help me fix it? Or, hey, I got the light bulb's out. I can't get up there on the ladder and do that. And you go and do it for him. There's a part that kind of almost feels empowering, like, yeah, Dad needs me. But you realize, oh wow, he's frail and he's slowed down a lot. He's not the dad he used to be, and never will be. And that's hard. That's really hard. My kids will deal with that someday. I hope a lot later on. I can't guarantee that. Um, my health is not probably the greatest. I know it's not. And, is it as bad as his? I don't believe it is. I hope it's not. But, um, yeah. I just think it's one of the most confusing and difficult relationships as men will go through, is that relationship with our dads or our father figures, whether it was your dad or stepdad or foster dad, or maybe it was a grandfather, maybe it was an uncle, maybe it was your mom's boyfriend, whatever it was. Um, I just think it's a very unique and different relationship, and I don't think women get it as much. And that's not a slam towards women. I'm not. This channel is not in no way. We may be geared towards guys. There's no way a slam towards women. Um, my absolute favorite thing in life are women. My wife, obviously, um, but I've grown quite fond to having women around. My daughter, my mother-in-law, my mother, my sisters, most of my sisters, all of them. But I'm gonna shit on some of them, on at least one of them. She knows who she is. She's the closest in age to me. I still have a grudge on a few things. I'll get even someday. The time is right. You know, in a nice way. Brotherly, sisterly nice, I guess. But I don't think women have that same. Maybe with their mother, there may be. I'm not a woman. I can't tell you how they feel. But with their dad, I think looking at my sisters, it was a very different relationship. When dad passed, I didn't have time to grieve at first. I have a mother that just lost her husband of, oh God, 60 years. I have three sisters that just lost their father. I have an aunt that just lost a brother. Uh, I have a wife that just lost her father-in-law, and two kids that just lost their grandfather. And for me, it was boom. Okay, I have to go into protector mode and deal with it. And while I grieved very briefly the day he passed, 10 minutes in private, not 10 minutes of crying, 30 seconds of that, 10 minutes of like, okay, it was months later before I felt like I could really sit down and breathe and go, it's time for me to grieve. Even to this day, it's May 6th, 2026. We're a year and a half, over a year and a half, over 2.5 years since he passed. And I don't think I've finished grieving. I don't think I've had that full blown, okay, I can put this behind me. Maybe I never will. I don't know. 2.5 years is a long time. For some things, it's a very short time to get over a major loss. Okay, but it is what it is. Um, it will always be a difficult and turmoil-filled relationship. Everyone's dad is different. I have friends that'll probably wouldn't understand what I'm saying. It's like I've never had that issue with my dad. And I've had others saying, well, all my relationships with my dad, every bit of it has been shitty. Um, so maybe it's more me. If you feel like talking about it in the comments, go ahead. If you don't, well, that's up to you. I'm not forcing anyone to talk about it. But I would tell you this. If your dad's still alive, cherish that. Make sure you've got as good a relationship as you feel comfortable with. As a father, I know that I've screwed up stuff with my son. That's on me. That's not on him. I am ungodly proud of what he's done. I look at him and I go, this kid is, in some ways, I feel as though I was ahead of him at 19 than where he is, but in other ways, I look at him and say, he's ahead of me at 19. So it's a wash there. I just hope that he looks back and goes, Dad was all right, you know. And my dad was all right. We had our moments. But it's okay to kind of have that. I don't know how I feel sometimes. But I'm going to leave it at that. I just thought it was important to be like, it's a tough relationship. I don't know if you can always put it into words. But I think dads ultimately want us to succeed. I think mine sometimes felt as though he felt threatened by some of us kids' success, that if we succeeded better than he did, that it diminished what he did. I think he felt as though if you didn't do things the way he did, you were saying that his way was wrong. And when it's really, it's like, no, it's just I do it differently. Nothing wrong with the way you do it. You like, mustard on your hot dog. I like ketchup. I'm not saying that it's wrong to put mustard on your hot dog. It's just not what I enjoy. To him, that was, almost like saying, oh, shit on that, because you eat mustard. What's wrong with you? No, I just preferred ketchup. But, at the end of the day, I think he did as best as he could do. The world was not that father knows best, idyllic world. When he became a father, it was closer to it when he was a kid. By the time he became a father, in the mid-60s was the oldest one of us, through the mid-70s with me, and then up through the 80s and into the 90s, while the world had friggin' changed from 1950 to 1990. That 40-year span, man, the world did several 360s and 180s and turned itself inside out and upside down numerous times. We didn't even know which direction we were headed in anymore, compared with each other. So things got better in one way, things got worse in the others. You take your pick as to what you think was better or worse. I'll let you be the judge. And I think that was difficult for him. So, for me, I don't know. I think things obviously have changed since I became a father in 2007 to 2026. But I don't think there's been as big a change. Obviously, it's only been, 19 years versus 40 for him over that span. But, well, no, if you look from when I was a kid to 2026, is a big change. Say from 1980 to 2026, is a big change too. But I don't know if it's as drastic as 1950 to 1990 kind of thing. And it's confusing as a parent. Sometimes you just don't know which direction to go. You want to pull your hair out, and you kind of throw the dart at the dartboard and hope it sticks and hope you hit the right spot. And that's where you go with your kids. Did he screw up sometimes? Yep. Do I think sometimes his heart wasn't in the best place? I think sometimes it wasn't. But I think other times it was. So, I'm going to leave it at that. This video's going to be over 30 minutes. Let me know if you'd like to see shorter videos, if 30, 40-minute videos are too long. If they're not long enough, are they just right? I know it's going to depend on the subject, but let me know. Um, until then, try to behave. I'm not saying don't have fun, just don't get caught. Maybe just try to behave. And we'll see you on the flip side. Bye.